Welcome to Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Bruce Winstanley from Winstanley Landscapes and Great Ocean Pools. And Bruce is an icon of the industry, so it was an absolute pleasure to have him on the podcast and hear his experiences about how he started his business and going into pools and the reason why he went into pools as well. He also touches on what it was like having the number of staff he had at certain times. So he has had, a few staff at one point, and he also had up to 13 staff at another. So he explains what each of those points was like. And he also touches on an acronym that he measures his success on using the letters that spell WHIRL. So he explains what each letter means and what sort of score you should be getting. So I loved that part of it, as well as the rest of it. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Bruce Winstanley. Bruce, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
By accident, like everyone else. Yeah, I had a lawn mowing business when I was in the bank, and just thought that, I was in the bank. And you were in the bank too, weren't you?
Yeah, same bank too.
Wow, God. I was in the bank earning $22,000 a year in 1991, and thought, I reckon I could make as much money mowing lawns, doing a bit of swimming coaching, and on the days off, I thought I might do landscaping. I didn't know what landscapers did. There's a landscaper that came into the bank regularly that I used to cash his checks, and he had a brand new Hilux four-wheel drive ute, and I thought he must be doing well for himself, and that was my business plan. I thought, as a retainer, I had a couple of $100 a week I could earn lawn mowing, and I rode my bike around Toorak and lesson pamphlets in letterboxes for mobile swimming teaching. So I was doing some mobile swimming teaching in backyards and started coaching the triathlon club at the Hawthorn pool. I had a squad there for 3 years, and that was another $100 a week. And rode my bike around Glen Iris, Malvern, delivering little postcard size cards, lawn mowing and landscaping. The usual. You see them on the utes nowadays. A lot of people start the same, and it just grew from there. I got a few leads from businessmen that were in the squad at Hawthorn. There were a lot of lawyers and accountants around Glenferrie Road, and I was charging $20 an hour, something ridiculous like that. Never had a boss, and then I did an adult apprenticeship in landscaping. Sat in class. You couldn't do night school back then. I had to take a day off each week, and I had a 6-month-old daughter, and did the old 9-hour-a-week burnout businessman approach, work as hard as you can, and just went from there. Just fell into things, reinvented yourself all along the way, and then finally I did a bit of work with the Greenery. I answered an ad in the paper for the Greenery Nursery, which, as you know, is one of the best nurseries in Victoria, and started doing some subcontracting to them. Started doing some massive $8,000 to $10,000 jobs, and joined the Landscape Association and met up with a whole lot of colleagues there and developed some lifelong friendships, and just learnt from all my mistakes all the way along. Yeah.
How long had the Landscaping Association been going for when you joined it?
I think the Landscape Association was started around mid-60s, I think. So right. I didn't join till 95. It was a Landscape Contractors Association back then. And there's some legendary figures that have been involved in that, and they've done a lot of fantastic work. If it wasn't for the Landscape Association, there wouldn't be an apprenticeship in landscaping. They started that. Just volunteers working from their backyards, or from their back offices. Somehow, a few of them found out that I'd worked in a bank and thought that I'd be a good treasurer, and that's how I got involved in the committee, and put a lot into it and got a lot out of it. And you're the same, Marnie. You're involved in the landscape in Victoria, aren't you? Yeah.
No, not officially. I do, little bits and pieces, but I've never done anything official. I've been on the board or anything like that, but
you've done garden shows and stuff like that.
Yeah. So where did it go from working for the Greenery Garden Centre to how did you start your own business?
Well, I was running my own business.
Oh, yeah, as a subcontractor, yeah.
Yeah, you soon learn how to quote. Back then, there wasn't as much work around, so everyone put apprentices on, and nowadays you'll get concrete pumps in and machinery, but back then you'd dig out a driveway by hand. And if someone had a truck, you thought, wow, they must be earning a lot of money. And if they had a bobcat, well, boy, they'd really made it. But I would get 10 inquiries a week from the Greenery, and I had to go and see every single client on the weekend, 10 clients on the weekend. After I mowed my lawns, done my swimming coaching, finished working my landscape jobs till dark every night, which I'd underquoted because I didn't know how to quote. And out of those 10 quotes, I would win one job. So I had to learn to sell myself pretty well, because the Greenery would put their letterhead on, their massive percentage on, and you'd have to buy all their plants and all their sand and cement and pavers, and they would fax the quote out to the owners. The Greenery would say, our landscaper, Bruce Winstanley, and they were great to me. It was great. I was thankful to have 10 jobs a week to quote, but my strike rate was 1 out of 10. So I soon learned how to type. My wife got sick of typing up the quotes. I ended up typing them up. Mind you, if it wasn't for her, I'd probably be broke, but she's always kept me grounded. And then just from there, you develop a word of mouth, and you put more. I soon worked out that I was better at project managing than being on the tools after probably 8 or 9 years. A few of the fellows in the Landscape Association said you don't need to be on the tools. We all go through ego stages. I was still writing out checks in the ute while I had a wheelbarrow of mud, and the boys would be looking at me going, oh, there he goes again. We've lost another wheelbarrow of mud, and he's laid 14 bricks. So I soon worked out that I'd surround myself with good tradesmen, and I'd try and get a decent price for what we did. But look, all in the way you're learning. I've got phone buddies. There's Tony from Domain Pools and Landscape. I speak to him all the time. Ian Barker, Don Thompson, Scott Timpkin. I spoke to Joel the other day from Aqua Dreams. I'm always speaking to people and learning, which is what you're doing now. Yeah. How much information have you learned from what you're doing here?
Yeah, and it's also good for it's good for your soul, for everyone to be talking as well.
So who am I speaking to on this podcast? This is for mainly trade people are listening to this. Well, where are we coming from with this, Joel? You do a lot of podcasts. How do you find the time?
I haven't done any. How do I find the time?
Yeah,
I just make it. That's like a lot of things you got to do. So yeah, I haven't got time for it, but it's something I love doing. So yeah, that's something I've learned is to get out of the grind rather than just working, doing the same stuff every day, stressing that clients what is your.
So you're a landscape contractor primarily. You don't do design.
I'd say 10% of what I do is design.
Yeah, and what sort of team have you got at the moment?
At the moment, it's 2 qualified guys, and I've got another apprentice starting in a couple of weeks. But I'll dial it back to that and just sort of start slow again.
Yeah. Okay. So taking time out of the day to do what you're doing now, obviously, is detrimental to your business down the track as well. Yeah, but you're obviously passionate about it.
It's only like an hour and a half out of the day. I still work weekends and work late days, like when we're working on a job where there's heaps of other trades on there, I'm usually the one who's closing the gate. So yeah, because they finish 3:30 and I'll keep going till 5. So yeah, I still do like you were saying, like the 70-hour week still probably.
Oh, Joel, what are you doing? Come on, mate.
Where did Winstanley Landscape start? Was that directly from after the greenery place?
Well, my lawn mowing business was called Laurel and Hardy Landscaping. Well, Laurel and Hardy Mowing and Gardening. I had a mate called Hardy, so we called it Laurel and Hardy. And then, it didn't look too serious on the side of the ute, Laurel and Hardy Landscaping. I changed it to. I was still, probably about the time I joined the greenery back in 95. I changed, probably around that time. Oh, I don't even know. Probably a couple of years before that. So Winstanley Landscapes, as the name is, started probably about 93. Before that, it was Laurel and Hardy Landscaping for 2 years until I worked out that, hang on, this doesn't look right.
I think that was a good move.
Yeah, that was a good move. And then I developed a relationship with David Bennett from Gardens by Design. I met him at Landscaping Victoria, and we were on the committee together, and we had similar interests. And he would listen to what criticisms I gave him. We had a bit of a relationship where we could hang a lot of shit on each other, and I'd look at his design and say, "You're kidding, Dave, how are we going to do that?" And he'd go, "Oh, you just do that." And I'd say, "Well," and Dave was a landscape contractor, but he hadn't been doing it for 10 years. And I said, "Mate, you've forgotten what's realistic." So for 20 years, David and I had a great relationship, and I'd encourage anyone to develop some relationships with designers. But you've got to be careful that you're the one taking the risk. Designers are great, but there needs to be that interaction where you can tell them, "Hang on, that's not going to work, and I'm not going to do it." Vice versa. Typically landscape contractors have got a reputation for not knowing the difference between an azalea and a camellia. Some have. So there needs to be a good interaction there. There needs to be a win from both parties. How do you work with many designers I see on your Instagram, Joel?
Yeah, I like working with a variety of different ones as well, because you get to do interesting jobs. And something I learned with experience is because some designers want to provide the plants or provide certain materials. And I'm happy to do that for some designers, but most I won't do it because there's good profit to be made in plants. So, there's one thing for them to be getting you the job, but if the plant dies, they're not going to be ringing out the designer to replace it if they've provided it. So, you got.
Well, I've got to admit, Joel, that's my pet hate. Yeah, because there's nothing. How do you run a business if you can't make profit on materials? So, I wouldn't deal with that. No. Maybe, no. You got to cut that out. Come on. Who's taking the risk?
I've gradually moved up into the type of projects that I wanted to be working on, the high end stuff, and a couple of designers have helped me along the way to get there. So if they're doing it, I don't have a problem at all with it. But when a new designer comes along and says that's you can provide the plants if you want, but you can install them as well.
Exactly. Who pays for them when they die?
Yeah. Something when I spoke to Sam Colley, he was reeling off because he worked for you as an apprentice, and he was reeling off some of the people that he worked with, and I know Sean McDonald as well from Greenstone worked with you as well. So
Sean's
it blows me away the quality of staff that you've had on working for you. So is there anything special that you've done to be able to train people up into the superstars that they are?
I don't know. I think I was just lucky, really. Yeah, we always had a great social team aspect. We used to have the company fishing trip every year, and the after work drinks and so forth. I think I was just lucky. I've always tried to surround myself with. I'd rather be top heavy normally, And we had a fellow called Chris Bright, which is Andrew Bright's father. Andrew Bright runs Bright Pools and Landscapes, and he's a terrific landscaper. But Chris used to we've always had mentors. So Chris was in his 50s. He was a stonemason. He'd been around paving since he was 15, and he was the father figure on site. Then we'd have Paul Hamilton from Hamilton Landscapes, who one of the best tradesmen I've ever seen. He had a good country stock, came from the country. Sam Colley came from the country too. I tried to get country stock, but we'd have the father figure on site, Chris Bright, and Paul would be there, and Sam was smart too. And between the two of them, I'd take the hands off the wheel a bit and let them go. I'd be always around the site, and we'd pull up a lot of stuff that we weren't happy with. Yeah, that team environment, and I'd rather be top heavy and have more senior guys and have too many apprentices and make less money and less mistakes. So yeah, a bit of luck. We've had 4 or 5 staff that have been with us over 15. Well, a few guys are over 20 years. Yeah, so long service leave is something I've always had to hand out. So
yeah, I'm just about to do that for the first time in 3 months.
Yeah, look, it's a good thing. It's stability, but there's no right or wrong answer on how to run a business. I think I've just had a bit of luck, and I've just made sure that I've tried to be on site and be part of the guys, even though I'm all thumbs. I am a tradesman. I've got a trade certificate, but yeah, I'm more thumbs than I am on paving or laying rock wall. Well, laying rock walls I used to do. I used to enjoy doing that and random paving, but frustration of the phone ringing and trying to order materials, I soon learnt that I'll leave it to these guys, and they were passionate about it. Look at Paul and Sam and James Ross in Queensland. He went to Chelsea Garden Show. Michael Davies. Yeah, I was blessed with some really good staff, but I think that mentorship with an older fellow on site, a subby that comes in and out and teaches them stuff is the way to go.
So how did you go from transitioning to being more of the project manager than doing the work yourself? Was that a gradual thing or black and white?
Probably my wife was looking at the books and telling me I'm not earning enough money and you better get your act together. I was always a good record keeper, and she was even a better record keeper than me, telling me I'm not making what I think I'm making. And I just could never lay the amount of pavers or blocks that all these other tradies were telling me they were laying, which I didn't know then, but I know now that they were full of it. They all brag about how good they are, and the stories get bigger, and that's how they quote the jobs. So I learned that very early in the piece, and I learned that working 9 hours a week, I was going to burn out. I wasn't seeing the family. And that was 25 years ago. I had a wake-up call. So if I wanted to see my kids' sport and have reasonable hours and have a lifestyle, I couldn't do it by doing everything. So, and these guys, these tradies that I've employed over the years, they're tradies. They don't want to do pen pushing. They want to lay pavers, lay bricks, build walls. That's what they want to do, and they're good at it. They're really good at it. But as far as paperwork, they are hopeless, absolutely hopeless. And 80% of my competition back then were like that. And I was finding, I thought, well, from the greenery, learning from the greenery, that they were putting something ridiculous, like 20%, 25% on top of my labour, plus all the plants and the sand, the cement on $100,000 job. If I won $100,000 job, there'd be people come in at 60 grand. So I had to learn how to sell myself. So I thought, well, I'll just concentrate on that. And then with David Bennett, with the old 1-2, I call it, he was the designer. If anyone wanted some landscaping done, I'd say, well, go and see Dave. and I'd say how fantastic Dave was. And then by the time they finished seeing David, they'd say how fantastic Bruce and his team were. So all of a sudden you're winning 1 out of 2 jobs rather than 1 out of 10. And there's so much more project management you've got to do on site and back office. None of the other guys could do that. You know, my guys order materials, yeah, but the bigger stuff I'm still ordering. And as long as I could go out on site, and which I still do, I get out, I just look for problems and drive the truck every now and then. I can have it both ways, yeah. And if I can find some time off, I don't have to be laying pavers. I can, as you know, I surf, so you know, I can go for a surf in the middle of the day. I can go and I could see kids sport. I could coach the basketball team. I could see my daughter play netball, and worked out that, hey, 50 hours a week's plenty, which you've got to work out, Joel.
Yeah, I still get to do all the other stuff. So I'll take my kid to soccer training and soccer on the weekend. So yeah,
so you don't sleep. You mustn't sleep.
I don't
you
need
work
to.
7 hours a week. You do that. You mustn't sleep.
I'll live when I'm alive and sleep when I'm dead.
But tell me about the bank. Yeah. So,
yeah, so
what was that?
The reason I went there was because I had my first daughter. She was 6 months old when we had this big job in winter. It was booked in, so it was my first $100,000 job for myself. That was supposed to start in the middle of winter, and then that guy pulled out. I hadn't got a deposit off him, and he pulled the pin on that job. So then I didn't have any other jobs to go to. So I freaked out a bit because I had a 6-month-old daughter and working for myself. So I thought I'd go and do something safe, and I like working with numbers, so I went and worked for the bank. And that's really similar to your story in terms of you seeing other business owners coming in and thinking they're making all this money. So then I thought I could do it myself again, and yeah, that's when I set out to start working on the higher end jobs. And after working about 2.5 years.
Oh, 2.5 years, right?
Yeah. Got into business banking, and I liked working there, but prefer landscaping. I'm pretty happy I made that move.
Yeah.
So did you, so 25 years ago, when you realised you were working too much, did you start doing things for yourself as well as not being on the tools as much?
No, I worked it out very early. I started the business in 91. I left the bank in 1991, so I had to make a business work. And it was my daughter's 5th birthday party, and that would have been 97, yeah. And I had the client, and I've told this story before, I'm sure people have heard it before. I had the client from hell, and he was working from home, and we were laying old red bricks. And he'd come out every half hour, and he'd have a fag, and he'd go, "Hey, Bruce, I don't like that brick there." And he was just doing my head in. And I had to be on site. I had 2 other guys with me, but he wanted me there the whole time, and I had to get to my daughter's 5th birthday party. And I got there 2 hours late, and I never forgave myself for that. I thought, I'm never going to do that again. And too bad about the customers. And I had my first holiday family had their first holiday, in 5 years. We went down the Wye River for a week, and I came back, and I stood in the lounge room, and I thought, I just can't do this anymore. I've got to go back to work today. And I thought, how am I going to wind myself up? And through other colleagues, Brian Rankin, Don Thompson, Rod Hanley at the Landscape Association, and we still get together on trips and talk about stuff, which you've got to do. And we all sort of get our heads together and say, you can't be doing any more than 60 hours a week. This is ridiculous. And I never did. I never ever did from that day onwards, which is 25 years ago, worked any more than 60 hours. And I did say I got rid of a couple of staff and said, I'm not going to have any more than 1 or 2 staff. Well, yeah, that changed. I got up to 13 at one stage. But I counted my hours, and I still do count my hours, and just made sure there's time for the family and myself. and worked out that I'm never going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I can make a comfortable living and have a good lifestyle. It's not, anyone can make money, but it's more about your hourly rate. If you work many, many hours, you can make a lot of money, but is it really worth it? So I have little systems of marking myself on how I'm going in life, and money is only one way of marking how I go.
Yeah, I heard you say that on the Landscape Victoria podcast, which I loved. Is it the WHIRL acronym? Do you still use that?
Yeah, the WHIRL, yeah.
I'd love you to explain that. I reckon it's awesome.
Okay. So WHIRL, WHIRL, is my way of marking how I'm going and how others, I think, should. For years, I was trying to work out what's important in life and whether you're successful. So I worked out that W is what most people think about. So that's wages. So you give yourself a mark out of 10 for wages. Might be a 7, might be an 8. Then health. Okay, so that's your H, health. Okay, so mentally and physically, how are you going? Are you having time off? Are you going to the gym? Are you playing golf? Are you playing netball or surfing or whatever you're doing? Give yourself a mark out of that. I'm actually coaching a couple of people at the moment, swimming businessmen that are enjoying taking an hour off during the day once a week, which they never thought they could do. And their health is improving. So give yourself a mark out of that. I is investments. We all have to have some sort of investment, whether it be a house, shares, superannuation, whatever. You have to have some sort of savings, or might even be a car. Not that that's a very good way of having investment. Then the last two are the most important. R is relationships and L is lifestyle. So you can make as much money as you like in the world and work 80 hours a week, but your R and your L are going to be 4 or 5 out of 10. So I figured, well, as a landscape contractor, yeah, I can make a reasonable living, but I'll never make a fortune. Well, why not work 40 hours a week and take time off myself? I'll check whether it's offshore, and I'll take an hour and a half off during the middle of the day, and if I have to catch up later on, I will. Or back when I was younger, I'd go and watch the kids play beach volleyball, coach the basketball team, what have you. And so that's how I mark how I'm going. So I like to try and be 40 out of 50 if I can. But if you're down in the high 20s, low 30s, there's something wrong.
Mm.
You can earn 5 out of 10 for your W. That's fine, as long as your H, I, R, and L are up there. That's fine. Relationships fall by the wayside with businesses just taking over your life. And yeah, that's what it's all about. That's where it's right. I'm the lifestyle businessman. If you want to earn 300 grand a year, fine, but interview someone else on the podcast. That's not me.
I probably wouldn't interview a landscaper.
Yeah, I lots of people do it different ways, and I was like everyone trying to build this empire, and then thought, hang on a minute, this isn't for me. There's too many other things in life. You know, I like to go and watch the footy and do stuff with the family and stuff. That's more important to me.
Yeah, there's so many times you can think of where you think life's too short, like all the cricketers that are dying, that have died recently, and even, you know, everyone can think of someone close to them who passed, and then you think, oh, I need to work rather than do other stuff. It's just crazy. Yeah, it's hard to get a balance though sometimes.
Yeah, well, the first 5 years doesn't count.
Yeah.
So you've got to put in very hard, long hours. If it was that easy, everyone would do it. And maybe 10 years, all right? But after that, you've got to really look at yourself and go, is this working or not? Because you know, all of a sudden you've got an invite to a barbecue on a Saturday and you're halfway through a job and you can't go, or a weekend away somewhere, life's too short. Life's too short. So
yep. So yeah. when you said you had 13 staff at some stage, and I've often spoken to people about how there's a you know, 4 or less is a good number, and there's a gap, and then it starts to work out better when you get around the 13 or 20. So what was that like, having that many staff? Like, did you find you just worked as hard and making the same amount of money as you had less?
It was good for my ego. You know, I can remember going to the garden show one day, getting everyone with their uniforms on, and including the garden maintenance staff. I think there was 13 or 14 of us, you know, with our uniforms, standing out the front of the fountain at the Melbourne Garden Show and thinking, how good are we? You know? And it was exciting, and it was great fun, and I wouldn't change anything. And we just had that much work. The reputation was growing. We had learning to say no. That's another one. So you don't necessarily always take a job back then just to make good money. Sometimes you take a job, you can call it blocking if you like, because you don't want your designer to go to another contractor to take that job. So I fell into that, like a few of us, I'm sure everyone has done. Hang on, I don't want you going to another contractor. I'm going to have to take this. So you found that you were keeping the designers happy and the customers happy, but in the end you learn that, hang on, who's winning here? Yeah. But look, there's no exact formula for what works. I know, I work a bit with Dean Clifford from Urban Landcraft. He's only got 3 guys and they've got a great system. You know, they work really well, and that works well for him. He's in and off the tools a bit. Then you look at someone like Ian Barker, and he's got dozens of guys in maintenance and in construction and design, and that works for him. I've gone from generally between 3 and 8 guys in construction for many years, and they all tended to work at some level. I know Steve Taylor said that once you get to, I think he said 8 to 10 staff, it got a bit hard. I listened to his podcast when you spoke to Steve. Yeah. It was terrific. We had 8 guys, but in the end, I don't think I made any more money. Maybe my ego was a bit better, and it helped develop the brand as well, so that you can charge more. But nowadays, I've only got 3 guys and a casual labourer, and we sub a bit of stuff out. Things have changed a lot in the industry. But there's no right or wrong answer. I haven't got the intelligence or the know-how to build a business that has 20 staff. I'd have to go to another level. Our best business, Kim and I, is our garden maintenance business. We only have 2 full-time staff, and a casual or part-timer 2 or 3 days a week. And I speak to my maintenance manager on the phone maybe once a fortnight. We've had the same clients for 15, 20 years. Kim, my wife, does about, we're trying to work out what she does, probably, I shouldn't say that, but probably maybe 6 hours a week on doing the accounting and so forth. And it runs itself, and I have to do an hour or 2 a month, and I get a good income from it. I couldn't survive off it alone, but hey, that's a great business. But now that we are primarily swimming pool builders, our business, it's like a game of 2020. In landscaping, it's like a test match, right? So you sit on that job for a few months. Yeah, you come, you go to do a little job in between. You have a home base, don't you? You'd be the same. You have a home base. I know you've got a ripper job in Newtown at the moment.
Yep.
So you use that as a base, but then you've got your regular clients from years ago that might want a little job. So you've got to make sure you look after them. So you might get a subby or two to help you out to run that, but you've still got your home base. Your main, it might even be 2 or 3 main 100, 150, 200 grand jobs. But it's like a test match. Yeah, off we go, we plod along. Whereas the pools is more 20/20. You've got to organise the steel fixer, the concrete sprayer, the tiler, the building permit, the engineer. Then you've got the pool plumber. Then you've got the excavator. Then you've got, and then it all has to happen at once. And then, of course, it's got to be done for the swimming season. So a mix of a few things is the way to go, I think.
How did you get into pools?
I went for my building license in 2005 for landscape builder category, and I was heavily involved with a few of the guys in the association trying to get landscaping as a recognised trade. We tried for many, many, many years and weren't getting anywhere. We got sick of people telling us that landscapers were lawn mowing guys, gardeners. We were trying to educate the public and try and charge more than $50 an hour. And I know there's schools against it, and there could have been a better way, but, and you'd hear it as well as I do, that the cowboys that join the industry that buy a ute and just start undercutting. Well, they don't know they're undercutting. They don't have the knowledge. It was just an easy way entry into the market, and I was the same. But the landscaping industry has developed so far over the years that Paul Hamilton, Sam Colley, I think their average job's $500,000 nowadays. They do extraordinary stuff. I'm proud that they did work for myself, and I'll hang my hat on that. They were just one of a kind sort of tradesmen. Scotty from Enki Pools. So Scott was a partner with Ian Barker, and he got his pool license a couple of weeks before me. And around that time, when I was doing the interview, they said, did you want to do any other category? And I said, well, what's involved with swimming pools? So I went for my swimming pool license and got it. Didn't know whether I was ever going to use it, but I've been working around pools for years, and I thought I was getting a bit sick of some of these pool builders that some of them didn't seem to care about how low the pipes were, or falls on the paving. And I just thought one day I might just do it myself. And I had a car accident, a really bad car accident, driving down to Phillip Island with the kids one day. We came out alive, and I came back and I said to Kim, life's too short. We're going to get a pool. And as it happened, the fellow across the road, a good mate of mine, Ron, he was a commercial pool plumber. And I said to him, I reckon I'm going to put a pool in. Ron, you reckon you could help me do the plumbing to put a pool in? And he said, yeah, we could do it. I said, what do you reckon it'd cost? And he goes, 20 grand. I thought, I reckon I could muster up 20 grand somewhere. So I went down the local pool and did a few laps, as I always do a couple of times a week anyway. And for me to go for a swim, I've got to do at least a K or 1,500 to make it worth it. So I swam. I thought, well, I'll put in a 12.5 metre lap pool. I thought, yeah, all right. So, and I thought, hang on, that's only about 10 strokes. Kidding me. I think it was 8 or 9 strokes maybe. And I was living on half an acre back then in Berwick. I thought, I reckon you could fit a 15 metre lap pool in. Anyway, cut a long story short, we ended up putting a 20 metre lap pool in with another 20 by 2.2 wide, with another 6 by 4 attachment to the side of that, shaped like an axe. And that was the first pool that I'd ever built. Then we put 2 in-floor cleaning systems in, and then we did water features. In the end, I don't even know what I spent. I think it's probably 150 grand with us doing it all ourselves. That was the first pool we ever put in. And then Stinger from Oscapes, you know Stinger from Oscar, I think. Did you work with him?
No, Jack. So the boss I took over the business from, he was best mates with him.
Well, Jack and Mark both rang me back around then and said, look, we hear you've got your pool license. Would you come down to Geelong? And I said, I don't see why not. So I built a couple of pools for Jack and a couple of pools for Mark. And then we got a couple of jobs in Torquay and Ocean Grove. And then I thought, hello, I reckon I could put the surfboard in, and that was it. All of a sudden, my business plan for all these years started changing, and I thought, I reckon I could start doing pools down here as well as Melbourne. So we started up Great Ocean Pools in, would have been, I think I changed the name. I thought Winstanley Landscapes as a pool builder. You know, what are people thinking down in Geelong with a Berwick address? So we started that in 2008, and we bought a little 2-bedroom house in Ocean Grove in 2010. And for years, I'd come down here 2 nights a week, and it was all 50-50 down here in Melbourne. And then probably 4 or 5 years ago, the pendulum swung towards Bellarine Surf Coast, and my business plan changed to, all right, let's just do work down here. So you keep inventing yourself, changing things, asking questions. You're asking questions. I'm asking questions. I'm learning stuff from you. There's enough work around for everyone. There's secretive stuff that other tradies talk about I just don't get. There's other pool builders in the area here that we ring each other. We're friendly competition, but I'd rather compete against someone that was a similar price and standard to myself, and I'd rather tell them what we're charging. I'm an open book as far as charging. If anyone knows me, I'm always on about charge rates being too low, and how we as an industry, whether it be landscaping or pools, and we still do landscaping a little bit, but there's enough around for everyone.
Yeah, when I spoke to you before come to the podcast, I said to you that I've started to find myself saying the same message as what you have been for as long as I've known you, is that people aren't charging enough, especially now when there's so much work around. It's just crazy. And
this podcast is going to tradesmen. I know there might be some clients out there listening. Well, that's fine, but I know that, all right, for instance, a commercial plumber or a commercial electrician with a 9-day fortnight, if you worked out their hourly rate, I'd take that any day of the week. However, you cannot put a price, and which I could never make hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I knew that I could make a lifestyle. So a lunch, a game of golf, a surf, a function, I watch the kids play sport, I'll always make, and you can't put a price on that, or a holiday or a trip away. So, all right, I can only make a certain amount and a comfortable living. I'm not whinging, but you can't put a price on that. But really, the difference, and there's all these estimating programs. I've heard you speak to a few people on the podcast, and I've been involved in trying to establish estimating programs for landscaping with all of my colleagues for years, and we've had meetings at other houses and worked out how we're going to do it. It's such a diverse trade, and you know this, Joel. How do you do an estimating program if you're doing different stuff every day? Unless you have a design business, which if I had my time again, I might do. If you had your own design business, then you know what you're designing, and you have some regular typical designs that you manipulate to people's gardens. You can then do your estimating programs, but then again, who's inputting the information as well? So and that's why I got into pools. There's no more money in pools, but it's measurable. So it's like making a hamburger. So if you can, and I just do it my way, but if we can do a dozen pools a year, it takes me half an hour to quote a pool. That includes typing it up. You know, if it's a big, complex pool, it might take an hour. You know as well as I, how long does it take to quote a $200,000 landscape job from a designer that you're not familiar with? You're looking at their different ways of designing stuff. That's where all the lost time goes, and that's why I switched over to mainly pools. And also I've got a competitive swimming background, so I love pools and I love the happiness that it brings to people, and I can incorporate some landscaping as well. And having said that, I've been landscaping 31 years, so I'm allowed to, the last 16 years, you know, have a bit of continuity and a bit of hamburger making with pools, so I know I'm getting a regular wage rather than some of these landscape jobs that and we've all done it, you know, oh, I didn't know, I didn't see that bit down the sideway that we had to pave. Whereas a pool, a 10x4 pool with a spa, well, there it is. So that's the only reason why I got into pools.
Yeah, I love the variety of landscaping, but it's also like when I've got clients asking when we're going to be starting their job, I've just got no idea, because every job we do is different, and it all takes a different amount of time, and it's just impossible to, well, for me, it's impossible to estimate. You sort of need to sit down for a couple of days to work out, you know, how long things are going to take. And then for that couple of days, you could have been doing a couple of days work and no one's paying for that estimation.
All right, so you found a pet hobby of mine talking about rates, and I know I'm like a broken record. I've written that many articles and spoken to that many fellows about it. Well, I say fellows, but it's mainly fellows in landscaping. But so in 2005, I quoted a job at $70 per hour plus GST, which is unheard of, right? And I quoted it quite well as a record keeper. It was a random paving job. It was random bluestone, and I allowed 3 square meters per man per day, plus grouting. We still didn't make the $70 per hour, but we probably made $55 an hour, because there's all the offcuts and the rubble and the tip fees and the stuff as well. But all right, let's say that was $70 per hour in 2005. And in 1990, and I'm good at remembering these things, in 1997, I beat my chest and said to a few fellows, I'm putting my rates up to $25 an hour. I don't care anymore. 25. So from 1997 to 2005, I went from $25 an hour to 70. Now we're now 2022. I would say that there's still a lot of landscapers still quoting $70 per hour. So what should that be now? Really, with all the things that have gone on, the superannuation is now going to be 10.5%. And if you want to make, let's put the benchmark of what your wage is as a A-grade commercial electrician, you're going to have to be quoting jobs at minimum $120 per hour. You would think, based on those prices back then, that landscaping now should be above $150 per hour quoting. But a lot of these trades who don't think further than there and don't record keep shoot themselves in the foot. So what do? You just keep talking about like we are now. And that's why I didn't know why I was coming. I didn't even know whether I was relevant coming on this show, but it gives me a forum to tell a few tradies, for God's sake, do some record keeping. And yeah, all right, you might be making 100 grand a year, but are you working 100 hours a week? Is it worth it?
Yeah, I worked that out at one stage a few years ago, and I was earning $32 an hour. it's making good money, but working a lot of hours for it. And then you carry the risk as well with all of that.
Well, once again, designers, and I love designers, don't get me wrong, but why give them the plants? Why give them the profit on the product? Like, you know, I build pools and we get stuff a lot cheaper, right? Like most businesses do, but you buy pavers and what discount do we get? Is it 5%? What else can you make money on? Irrigation? Yeah, you mark up irrigation, but who goes back to fix the irrigation, which will leak, and we all go back and we fix it. And then the plants, which used to be the only way we could make money in landscaping, you're giving that to the designer who's getting their hourly rate guaranteed from what they're designing, whereas we're quoting jobs dealing with weather, clients' interpretation of quotes being different to what you've interpreted at, pulling up stuff. It's a tough way to make a living. So there needs to be continuity, and there needs to be transparency in what you're charging products for. So plants is the obvious one. Why should the designer? I know there's a lot of designers listening here, and good on you if you can do it, but as a landscape contractor, I'll be putting the shoulders out and going, no, you want us, we're covering this.
Bruce, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on, and I've got no doubt there'll be plenty of people who'll be messaging me saying how much value they got out of this. And I recommend, if anyone who did enjoy it, I reckon it's worth listening to the Landscape Victoria one you did about a year and a half ago as well. That was awesome to listen to. But thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, Joel. Pleasure. See you soon.